Good day and welcome. Today, we're continuing our series on an important topic in history, the European colonization of Africa in the late 19th century. Links for all the videos on this topic are in the description, so be sure to check them out. We'll be looking at the results of colonization. Here's a teaser. What was one major economic impact of colonization on African societies? And how did colonization affect the political boundaries within Africa? We will be discussing these issues and more. Stick around until the end for some thought-provoking questions to test your understanding. Challenge yourself and see how well you've grasped the material. It's a fantastic way to boost your confidence. Please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly uploads. Let's get started. Except for Ethiopia and Liberia, almost all of Africa was colonized by European powers. Colonization had many effects on Africa, some good and some bad. On the positive side, there were improvements in infrastructure and healthcare. However, there were also negative impacts, such as economic exploitation, cultural disruption, and political instability. We will discuss these issues in more detail. On the positive side, a Western way of life was introduced, which had some positive aspects. Roads and rail networks were built, helping to develop economies. New mining and industrial technology was brought to Africa, along with more sophisticated money systems and banking. New irrigation methods were introduced, and hospitals, schools, clinics, housing, and administrative buildings were built. Africans also learned about new economies through globalization. However, colonization also had many negative impacts on the social and cultural values of Africans. African culture was destroyed as Western clothing and buildings replaced traditional ones. New African borders mixed tribes, causing some languages and histories to die. Missionaries brought Christianity and caused many Africans to abandon their traditions. New calendars, languages, and writing systems were introduced. Politically, one of the most significant impacts of colonization was the forced subjugation of African peoples. European powers established control over African territories through military force and imposed their own systems of government, laws, and administration on the local populations. This often led to the suppression of traditional African cultures, languages, and religious practices. Traditional chiefs and their authority were replaced by colonial authorities. Sometimes the colonial authorities appointed new chiefs. Africans were oppressed in their own land and had no freedom of movement. Foreign systems of government, such as democracy and communism, were introduced. European colonization led to the establishment of artificial boundaries between different ethnic groups, which often resulted in conflicts between different groups over land, resources, and political power. The arbitrary borders drawn by the European colonialists during the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 often divided ethnic groups and created artificial countries. New military systems were introduced, and resistance was suppressed by force. The breakdown of traditional forms of government led to the rise of powerful leaders who were corrupt and greedy. An example of this would be President Idi Amin of Uganda. One of the most significant impacts of colonization was the forced subjugation of African peoples. European powers established control over African territories through military force and imposed their own systems of government, laws, and administration on the local populations. The genocide in Rwanda in the 1990s was also a result of artificial borders. The Congo and Sudan still face these conflicts today. Economically, the system became money-based instead of a barter system. Africans were forced into becoming cheap labor. Colonization also led to the forced migration of millions of African people, many of whom were taken as enslaved labor to work on European-owned plantations and mines. This forced migration led to the displacement of families and communities and the loss of traditional ways of life. Another major impact of colonization was the exploitation of Africa's resources, particularly its land, mineral wealth, and labor. European powers forced African farmers off their land and turned it over to European-owned plantations and mining operations. They also imposed taxes and tariffs on the local population, making it difficult for them to participate in the local economy. Africa's raw materials were taken to Europe and turned into finished products, which were then sold back to Africa. Europe became rich, while Africa became poor and dependent on the European powers. Many African states are not economically free. They still produce primary resources and sell these raw materials to European countries at low prices. They then buy the imported manufactured goods back from Europe at high prices. African states that are poor need to build clinics and schools, so they borrow money from the World Bank. Money is granted to them, but they have to behave in a certain way, so they are still controlled by European or Western countries. This is called neocolonialism. The legacy of European colonization in Africa continues to be felt today. The forced subjugation of African people, the exploitation of Africa's resources, and the forced migration of millions of African people has all had a lasting impact on the continent and its people. The artificial borders drawn by the European colonialists continue to be a source of conflict. The suppression of traditional African cultures and languages has impacted the continent's cultural heritage. Most people have strong ideas about colonialism and colonization. Sometimes what you hear is an opinion or point of view rather than a fact. A fact is something that is known to be true and can be proved to be correct. There is no doubt about a fact. For example, South Africa was first colonized by the Dutch and then the British. An opinion shows how people feel about the facts. An opinion is a belief someone has about a topic. It is possible for people to have different opinions about the same facts. For example, the belief that colonization by the British was something negative is a point of view. An opinion or point of view cannot be true or false. You may agree or disagree with an opinion. In a democracy, people are encouraged to have different opinions and to be tolerant of the views of others. It's important to know the differences between fact and opinion because understanding this helps us think critically and make informed decisions. Knowing whether a statement is a fact or an opinion allows us to evaluate the credibility of information, engage in meaningful discussions, and respect diverse perspectives. We have come to the end for today. But before we go, please attempt the following questions before the answers pop up. You can pause the video as you go. This is an important section that consolidates what you have learned. In the next video, we will be looking at the Ashanti Kingdom and the colonization of the Gold Coast. So, let us meet next time as we discuss this further. Be sure to check out the link for this in the description for more videos. Also, please do not forget to subscribe so that you do not miss our weekly uploads. Otherwise, thank you for watching and keep well.